You're sitting in your car on the side of the road. Cops pulled you over for something minor, like maybe a broken taillight. The officer walks up to your window. You're completely polite, and before the officer even mentions a word, you hand him your driver's license and your insurance. But then he starts probing. He says, "Where are you headed? Where did you come from tonight?" And you answer the questions exactly like we've talked about on my previous videos. But then, the officer does something you didn't expect. He leans back from your window. He crosses his arms. He looks at your car, scans front to back, looks back at you, and says, "I think you're hiding something." Your stomach drops. Your mouth goes dry. And every instinct in your body is to say something to make sure that cop doesn't believe you're actually hiding anything. Here's the problem. What most people say in that moment, that gut reaction, that instinct to defend yourself, is the single fastest way to turn a routine traffic stop into a full-fledged search. I'm Jeff Hampton, the people's lawyer, and I've defended thousands of cases where I've seen traffic stop searches start with these exact words. Not a drug dog, not something sitting in plain view, but a bad reaction to those 6 words. And even though this police technique works on almost everybody, it's not going to work on you. Because by the end of this video, I'm going to give you the exact words, word for word, that shut this down cold. And I'm going to show you with actual case law why the law is completely on your side. But first, you have to understand that cop saying, "I think you're hiding something," is not an observation. It's not a conclusion the officer reached based on any evidence. It's a tactic. In fact, it's a trick. It's an interrogation technique cops are trained to use during traffic stops to get you to respond. And once you understand how the trap works, you'll never fall for it again. So, here's what's actually happening when an officer says those words. The officer has no evidence. Think about this. If they had evidence, if they saw something in plain view, or they had something that actually triggered probable cause, they wouldn't have to turn around and look at you and say, "I think you're hiding something." They just get you out of the car and search everything. The fact that they said this to you means they have nothing. And when they have nothing, they need you to give them something. And the phrase, "I think you're hiding something," is specifically engineered to trigger your fight or flight response. The second you hear those words, your heart rate spikes, your palms get sweaty, your throat tightens, you feel accused. And not just accused, but accused by someone with a badge, with a gun on their hip, standing just 2 feet in front of your face. And what do accused people do? Cops are expecting you to defend yourself. It's human nature. You want to prove that you're innocent. "No, officer, I swear I'm not hiding anything. You can look in my car if you want to. It's just my gym bag in the back seat. I mean, I can show you." Every single one of those responses is a gift to that police officer. And I mean that literally. You literally just did their job for them. But here's the part that almost nobody knows, and the single detail that will change how you deal with police officers during every traffic stop. When the officer says, "I think you're hiding something," they're not just listening to what you say, they're watching where you look. This is a real technique. It's called a provocation statement. They say something accusatory, and then they watch where your eyes go. Did you glance over to the glove box, to the center console, to something maybe under your seat? Maybe you glanced back towards the trunk. That involuntary glance that you didn't even know you made now becomes this in the police report. It's, "The suspect then looked nervously and suspiciously over at the center console." And suddenly, the officer will claim he's in fear for his officer's safety, and he needs to get you out of that car to pat you down for a search. All because what? A statement the officer made that provoked you to have a response. And here's the thing that makes this even more calculated. The officer doesn't actually have to think you're hiding something. They have no idea. They're actually watching to see if you think you're hiding something. That's the whole game. They throw out an accusation, and then they study your response like a poker player reading a tell. Now, put yourself in the officer's shoes for a minute, because they've done this thousands of times. They know 8 or 9 out of 10 people will immediately start talking when they use this technique. They know you'll start explaining, defending, and volunteering information. And in that flood of words, something useful to that police officer almost always comes out of your mouth. I mean, "My friend might have left his bag in the back of the car, but I don't know what's in it." Or, "Well, officer, I do have my prescription medication over here in the glove box, but it's legal." Or the classic, "I'm innocent, officer. You can search my car. I've got nothing to hide." Every word is a brick in the case the officer may be building against you. That officer is not having a conversation. They're actually conducting an investigation, and you are the prime suspect. So trying to prove your innocence on the side of the road almost never works, and it almost always makes it worse. But here's where it gets interesting, because the law is actually on your side, and the cop hopes you never learn it. Under our Constitution and Supreme Court law, an officer saying, "I think you're hiding something," is never considered probable cause. It's also not reasonable suspicion to think you've done anything. It's legally nothing. The Supreme Court made this crystal clear in United States versus Sokolow. Reasonable suspicion requires, and I'm going to quote the court here, "specific and articulable facts." A gut feeling is not specific. "I think you're hiding something" is not articulable. It's an opinion, and opinions are not legal standards. In Florida versus Bostick, the Supreme Court ruled that even in a confined space, even when you feel like you can't say no, you always have a right to refuse consent to a search. In Schneckloff versus Bustamante, the Supreme Court ruled that consent must be voluntary. And if you only give consent under pure psychological pressure and duress, that consent could be ruled to be involuntary and invalid. An officer accusing you of something and then staring you down until you crack. That's textbook psychological pressure. And the 2 Supreme Court cases of Illinois versus Caballes and Rodriguez versus United States both ruled that a police officer cannot extend a traffic stop beyond its reasonable purpose. In other words, like if he's going to pull you over for a broken taillight, he has to give you a ticket for it, and not just hold you on the side of the road unless he has independent, reasonable suspicion you've committed another crime. So, if the cops pull you over for some ticky-tack traffic violation, they can't just leave you on the side of the road and apply psychological pressure until you crack, unless they have some legal basis to believe you committed some other crime. Oh, and one more thing. Your right to remain silent doesn't just apply to questions the cops may ask you. It also applies to provocative and intimidating statements they might make. So, if he says, "I think you're hiding something," you don't have to actually play his game. So let me put all of this together. The officer said something to you that has zero legal weight. It's not evidence. It's not probable cause, and it's not reasonable suspicion. But he's counting on it triggering a panic response in your brain that lead most people to give up their constitutional rights and start spewing at the mouth in order to defend themselves. It's not worth arguing with the officer, and you can't prove your innocence on the roadside when the cop already thinks you're guilty. But you also don't want to sit there just staring straight ahead when the officer is accusing you of something and waiting for a reaction. So, what do you say? Here are the exact words. Memorize them. Number 1. Officer, I am not required to answer that question. Number 2. Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. Number 3. Officer, I refuse consent to search. And then number 4. Am I free to leave? That's it. 4 phrases. Now I'm going to show you why each phrase works. Number 1. I don't have to respond to that. You're not being rude. You're not being combative. You're simply refusing to play his game, and you have a constitutional right to refuse to do so. You're not admitting anything, and you're not explaining anything. You're just not playing the game. Number 2. I don't consent to any searches. This is probably the most important part of what you say. Just say it one time. Say it like a fact, because it is a fact. This simple statement removes any doubt from that officer's mind, and it actually removes the most powerful opportunity that officer has to get into your car, because he's counting on you giving him consent. Without consent, he's not going to be able to make it into your car. And if he's saying that he thinks you're hiding something, all he has is an opinion. And the Fourth Amendment does not bow to an opinion. And finally, am I free to go? This is important because this single statement, this single question that you're making to the officer, forces that officer to make a decision about what he can legally do next. If the cop has nothing, he's now going to have to let you go. Or, if he tries to detain you illegally, he's going to have to come up with a good legal reason for continuing that detention on the side of the road, and I think you're hiding something is not a good legal reason. You say, wait a minute, Jeff. What if the cop starts pushing back and saying things like, hey, man, why are you being so defensive? If you got nothing to hide, why don't you let me take a look? If he pulls that one on you, you look at him and say, Officer, with all due respect, I exercise my right to remain silent. I do not consent to a search. Am I free to leave? The nothing to hide argument has been rejected by every court in our country. And your right to privacy doesn't evaporate just because the cop wants you to prove your innocence. You now know exactly what to say when cops claim you're hiding something. But what if the cop takes it to the next level and begins to think that you must be carrying a weapon or doing something that's putting his officer's safety at risk, and now he demands you step out of the car? Check out this next video where I break down your rights and how to deal with cops where, when they claim you have to step out of the car, you should say these exact words. See you over there.